Delivering great tasting product to your customers is important. Saving energy, space, and improving operational efficiencies is good for your bottom line. A perfect choice for convenience retailers, Adande Refrigeration's patented modular units deliver so many efficiencies it's no wonder brands such as Sheetz and GetGo are installing these temperature-stable, hold-to-cold fridges across their U.S. food courts. When it comes to refrigeration, convenience is at the very heart of Adande Refrigeration. Learn how you can excel in food service, save time, space, and energy with Adande Refrigeration at adande.co.uk or adande.com. Professionals in the know, choose Adande. You're listening to Shop Talk Live, the podcast, brought to you by Global Convenience Store Focus. Shop Talk Live is a unique video and podcast series featuring senior retail executives in the global convenience, fuels, and mobility retail industry, hosted by Dan Munford and Carolyn Schneer.
Well, welcome to Shop Talk Live. I'm talking about my favorite subject. Of course, it's mobility. I post too much on this, but I'm not going to stop. Craig, you're not going to stop talking about mobility either. Thank you for co-hosting today.
Certainly, we won't be stopping talking about it anytime soon, and we're delighted that you've invited on this one, Dan. Thank you.
Well, it's going to be an interesting one. We're talking about e-mobility with a leader here in Europe, and especially, of course, the Nordics, as we've seen on the road, Craig, over the last year or last years, really, in Denmark, Sweden, and of course in Norway. That's, of course, Circle K. So Craig, why don't we get on with that? And perhaps I can invite Christian Ellneby, who's director, head of finance and strategy for global e-mobility at Circle K. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, absolutely. Let me do you justice, Christian, and just introduce your role, which I think in itself is interesting. So you've been at Circle K for some years. You joined Circle K e-mobility 2 years ago, though, didn't you? And you were previously, before that, CFO with the Danish business of Circle K. And so you very much got a strategic background. And I know you also played a key role in I guess, one of the big moves in the European industry of recent years, which was the acquisition of Total Energies on behalf of the Circle K parent company, Alimentation Couche-Tard. So, you've got a very strategic sort of perspective on all these big things that, Craig, we've been talking about. I sort of single that out, the e-mobility team, because you've got you lead 60 employees focused on e-mobility in an Oslo office, don't you? And you've got another 70 who again are focused on e-mobility but from an IT perspective in the Warsaw market. So that's interesting.
Yeah, not me personally, but together with my management team, yes, we're heading up a super engaged group here in Oslo and in Warsaw, yes.
And Christian, I mean, super busy times for you. I mean, we all know that it's an exciting time in EV. We know that the future is coming quicker than I think any of us expected, which is often the case. But could you just, for certainly for my and everyone else's broader interest, could you just give us a little overview of the history of the Couche-Tard business?
Yes, absolutely. The first Couche-Tard store in Laval in the Quebec region of Canada, which was then opened by our founder, Alain Bouchard, in 1980, so 43 years ago today. And if we turn the slide to the next one, this is sort of highlighting very much sort of the journey we've been on ever since. He, together with his co-founders, he expanded his business quite rapidly in Canada for the first years. And in 2000, he moved into the US. And through that, the first major acquisition, which was Circle K. In 2012, they made the first entry into Europe through the acquisition of Statoil Fuel Retail. And several of my colleagues here in the European office are all SFR employees. In 2015, we are global rebranding and launch of our new global brand, Circle K. And since then, it has been a very much sort of a combination of organic growth and structural growth through acquisitions. And now most recently in March, where we announced the acquisition of the retail assets in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg from TotalEnergies, which was super exciting. And I had the privilege of acting as project lead in this transaction, which was sort of a 18-month journey. And we have an ambition to close this transaction by end of this year. Now, located across several continents, we have more than 14,000 stores globally. The vast majority of them in North America still, but Europe is catching up quite rapidly, especially with the TotalEnergies acquisition soon to close. Speaking of that, we have an interesting slide on that. If we move to the next one. It is a transformative acquisition for us. We're expanding our network in Europe with more than 80%. And we're moving really into the heart of continental Europe and into some of the most strongest economies in Europe today. And we're doing that from a very strong position in Northern Europe. We are the number one player in 6 out of our 8 markets in Europe today. And we're taking very, very strong positions here in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And then from an EV perspective, which we're going to talk about more today, it is a super interesting move as well. If we are to choose which markets do we want to expand from Scandinavia and Ireland, where we are today, it is into these regions. You see the EV adoption rates from 20 up to 30% in Netherlands. So these are very, very attractive markets for us from an EV perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Really, and of course the EV model is something you're pretty happy with, isn't it? And across the Scandinavian market, so you're kind of EV ready, aren't you, Christian, for these very attractive German and Dutch market opportunities?
Yeah, I think we have gained very valuable experience since we started up in 2017, and several of our sort of the people who started this journey are still with us and in the management team. But we're still in a learning phase, and we're still don't have all the answers on to sort of what is the insight we have gained in Norway first and then Scandinavia. How applicable are these when we now expand into continental Europe? And that is something we want to sort of validate now going forward. But what is absolutely certain is that we have gained very valuable experience in, say, the most advanced EV market in the world.
Absolutely, 100%. Just thinking about EV adoption, what are the primary drivers for EV adoption?
Yeah, I think as we see it, we have 3 sort of factors which is more than others driving the EV adoption. And first of all, it is regulation. And here we see authorities using both the carrot and the stick, so to say, in driving the transition to EV. Using the stick in terms of restricting access in especially urban areas for fossil fuel cars, making it not possible to park during certain time periods or certain areas. But where we see that they have been particularly successful is using the carrot. And here I think Norway has been a very clear front runner in this area by introducing the strong incentives for buying an EV car, where they have the zero duty policy, which really accelerated the EV sales in Norway. And then not only buying the car, but then also actually driving it and owning it, where you can pass toll roads for free, you can park for free in public areas. And this is now recently changed from fully free to heavy discounted. But this has been a very successful formula. And we see sort of the opposite impact of this. We saw it in Denmark, where they were also very early off the blocks in introducing strong incentives for the acquisition of an EV. But then I believe it was in 16 or 17 or something that they overnight ceased those incentives and EV sales went from a fairly sort of high level down to close to zero. And the Tesla Model S, for example, went from being a very attractive car to a sort of super luxury car.
Yeah.
Denmark has now reintroduced those incentives, and we see that EV sales are very much picking up again there.
Craig, I know. Well, it's an interesting point. Craig, I know we were talking about whether European governments are rowing back a bit on carrot and stick legislation. I mean, what's your view on that, Craig?
Well, Dan, I think it's clear that governments have influenced adoption over the last years, and as Christian quite rightly says, particularly in Norway. I think my fear is we had a following wind up until about a year ago, and everybody, the direction of travel was right. The environmental story was right behind it. It just feels a little bit in the last month or two, or perhaps quarter, that governments seem to be rowing back a little bit on their commitment to to the environmental legislation that they've all signed up to, which is obviously on one level shocking.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering whether we're more influenced to think that because of what's happened in the UK, Christian. As you'll be aware, the government have rowed back from 2030 to 2035. So that's definitely made an impression in the UK. Everyone's talking about it at the different EV events I've been to. But I guess in Denmark perhaps they've realised their error and they've reintroduced attractive legislation on this.
Yeah, I think, and we see sort of the growth rates in EV car sales is sort of somewhat behind Sweden, but showing very, very positive numbers. So I think authorities have a big influence here, but it's not sort of only them who has it. Another factor is the customer acceptance, and sort of how attractive is it to move from having a fossil fuel car to an EV car. And here we have seen sort of a very, very, very big shift in the last 3 years. First of all, driven by the driving range of an EV car. It is now sort of fully compatible to have an EV car versus a fossil fuel car in terms of driving range. And also it is the number of models in the market. I believe today there are more than 100 models available in Norway if you want to buy an EV. And so sort of the selection of cars is massive, and you see the Tesla Model Y being the absolutely most sold car in Norway, I think 3 times as much as the number 2. And also,
Christian, the manufacturers will say that the satisfaction with EVs is super high. When people make that commitment, they're certainly very happy with their purchase. We'll come on later to your tremendous figures on EV charging uptime, which was in the early days that was obviously a little bit of a stumbling block. But we say at Shopworks, the research that we do, Caroline, who's our head of research, often says, how do you know when someone owns an EV? And the answer is because they tell you, because they're so happy with it. And it's helping.
And it's not only manufacturers who say this; the consumers say it as well. I think there was a recent EV survey in Norway where the satisfaction rate on the EV among the EV owners are super high.
Yeah, so, exactly right.
And also, I think in parallel with this number of models available, the driving range on those, I think we in the industry has been, without patting ourselves too much on the back, but I think we have been quite successful in rolling out charging networks in recent years as well. So,
well, I think this is a key point, Christian, and I'm pleased you mentioned this because do you see it? Do you see it? The road that, and I'll call us the roadside retail industry because I think that's a very good phrase to describe what we do now. But do you think the role of the roadside retail industry to create sufficient on-the-go charging infrastructure is absolutely crucial in terms of, encouraging the EV adoption to be a smooth curve as opposed to a disrupted curve?
I think we're not there yet, but I think we're getting better, and I think the ratio between the growth in EVs and the growth in the charging network is sort of that moving in the right direction. And consumers' perception of having to stand in a queue and waiting for the charge has not increased during the past 5 years. And that is actually quite impressive when you look at how much the adoption rate has increased in that same period. So I think we still have a way to go. We're not there yet, neither we or our peers in the industry, but I think at least since 2019, we have taken big steps in the right direction.
And Christian, allied to the range, which is super critical, which is clearly increasing. How do you foresee the kind of, because the other part of it is the battery charge time. You know, how do you see that influencing consumer adoption and network development?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think most likely we're moving from 300 to 400 kilowatts now when we expand next year, like many of our peers. How much higher this will go, I don't know, but I think we're coming to a point where sort of the time it takes to charge your car from 20 to 80% is sort of not very long. And I think the key is also what we're looking at them is sort of how do you make the most out of that time during the charging time.
Absolutely. And of course, I guess won't perhaps go into it, but we've got the opportunity of truck heavy vehicle charging on the go as well, which is something which I know Circle K are pretty mindful of in key Nordic markets too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's I think, as we have said to you previously, like we have used Norway as a lab for sort of the development of the EV charging industry, but for heavy truck charging, we have Sweden leading the way here, and our site in Vädermotet, just outside Gothenburg, is actually now one of our biggest charging sites in terms of kilowatt hours. So it is significant things are happening also for heavy truck charging.
No, absolutely. Now, Craig, you mentioned I think you wanted us to talk a little bit about uptime, charger uptime, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, so you know, it's great, obviously, to hear that the adoption is clearly increasing, customer acceptance. You know, the economics are now getting much better of the kind of lifetime ownership of an EV, and that's all helping. But I think for us at Shopworks, so to speak, the really interesting bit is, you know, once people have got an EV and they're out on the go, what's their behaviour going to be, and how is Circle K satisfying not only the charging need, but also the kind of non-charging need, what historically we've called the non-fuel retail element of the offer. So I think my first question, and obviously the hot topic, Christian, is always, it seems, charger uptime. So how is that? How are you handling that, I should ask?
So we're moving in the right direction, and we have taken big steps in the last 12 months on this, and we are now at a rate of north of 96% in terms of uptime in Norway, and even higher in Sweden and Denmark, where we have more concentrated on 150 kilowatts plus chargers. So it is super important for us. It is both sort of a very bad customer experience of having meeting chargers that are not functioning, and also is sort of a loss of revenue for us. I think we're not there yet. If we're going to be fully competitive to the experience of a fuel customer, we need to be north of 99%.
Yeah.
So we still have a way to go, and that's sort of the long-term ambition to get there. But I think we're moving in the right direction, at least in terms of that.
Well, and being very modest, because to be honest, I mean, obviously, I think you have the aspiration for 99%, and I'm sure you'll get there, by the way. But I think it is a massive achievement to get to 96%. Especially if you think some of the industry averages, and this is not a Circle K number, but if you look at some of the industry averages across all chargers available, they've been much lower than that, haven't they? And it seems to me, Craig, that it's a huge point of difference to have a very, very reliable EV charging network, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a super important point of difference. And the other thing, Dan, and we've seen this coming through the research over the years, is for a long time EV drivers felt unloved. The charger was not only not working, but it was stuck round the back, not under the canopy. And if you drive an EV, you just felt like you were very much a second-class citizen. And now that Circle K are certainly leading the way and starting to embrace those customers, I think it plays back to what we were discussing earlier, which is the adoption or the customer adoption of EV, because suddenly they start to go, oh, actually, people do like us.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Christian, just thinking more broadly at the sort of Circle K e-mobility and the competitive advantage, what else potentially differentiates Circle K as the leader in electric charging? What are the other factors that you think about?
I think home charging, is and will continue to be sort of the most common way to charge your EV. But we're confident, and numbers shows us that high-speed charging will play a key role going forward, and is playing a key role today. In Norway, which is a market where more than 90% of EV customers have access to their own home charger, 40% or close to 40% are still visiting a high-speed charging site monthly or more often. So I think that is a proof that our soon-to-be 5,000 locations in Europe will play a key role going forward. So then it's a little bit up to us on how do we make the most of it. And this is today, it is still not a seamless experience to charge your car. It's getting easier and easier to find it, and you still sort of standing in line less and less often. But you still need to navigate through a myriad apps. Payment is still something which is not very easy. Getting more and more easy with auto charge and plug-in charge, but it is still not fully rolled out. But once we're there, and we're confident we'll get there, these factors will become table stakes. So we believe then that the customer will want something more in addition to the ability to pay. And then having to sit in your car for 20 minutes while your car is charging up, I think is not going to be sufficient. And here, I think our convenience network of stores can play a key role. Our car wash network will play a key role as well, not while you're charging, of course, but then as a total offering. And we see very, very positive numbers. And when we analyze the shopping behavior of our EV customer base, and here we have our extra loyalty program where we have 3.4 active members in Europe today. And when we analyze the shopping behavior of the EV customers in that program versus the ICE customers, we see that the EV customer actually have a higher shopping frequency than the ICE customer. So it's 11% higher. And not only that, they have a higher basket value because they're staying a little bit longer. And there are more frequent car wash customer. So I think we're not there yet, it's important to say, but we need to get to a place where we're not looking at the EV customer in silo and the fuel customer in silo. We need to look at it sort of from a total value of that customer. And I think, but the ability to offer this, I think, is going to be very important.
So, Christian, I was going to ask. Obviously, critical to get that. That they're doing something else apart from charging, and also drive the basket value. Mm-hmm. in terms of this, people getting out of their car, we see lots of not conflicting, but different, a huge range. Let's put it that way, of what people are doing. You speak to Wawa in the States, and they're saying that their Tesla charging stations, only 25% of people get out of the car to do anything. Up in the north of England, we have a figure where we know that 76% of people get out of the car and go into the building. We don't know what they do when they get in there, but they are then exposed to the opportunity of buying something else. Do you have a feeling for what kind of percentage of people do something?
Yeah. We haven't gone public with those, but what we can say is that we see higher conversion to store among our EV customers than we do on our fuel customers. Absolutely.
Okay, which is tremendous. And the other side of the same coin, which I think is quite interesting, is people are starting to think about not just how you get the customer out of their car into the store, but how you get the store to the customer who's sat in their car. And it's not an EV market, but we always think that the best people who do that at the moment are Petronas, who they have a really strong in-car offer. Is that something that you're looking at as well?
Absolutely. And I think when we're now moving into continental Europe, we'll be present in more markets. I think we will sort of be a more relevant counterpart to many of the big OEMs going forward. And I think establishing those partnerships and what you're talking about, Craig, to have the opportunity to get into the car is something which is absolutely valuable. If that is pre-ordering, communicating good offers, etc., that's not we don't have the answer to that, but of course it's very important to get into the car.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. I mean, Christian, one of my reflections, just listening to what you were saying about some of the results you're having with your business across Scandinavia, and how important the EV is as one component of the offer, the Circle K offer. This is for me to speculate and for Craig to speculate rather than a question to you. But I was interested to see the EG Group move yesterday, and their clear statement that they're going to invest a lot of the money from that sale of to Asda in EV Point, which is their brand name for their e-mobility on the go charging solution. So and I guess to be competitive, that's everyone's going to need to do that if they want to compete as the mix of EV drivers grows in many European markets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it will be a key contributor when you're looking at the overall sort of customer profitability. And we saw sort of a very interesting example when we analyzed the car wash business in Denmark a couple of years ago. We discovered that for every €100 a car wash customer spent on car wash, he spent €300 in the store, which completely changed sort of the business case for attracting a new car wash customer. And we see a little bit of that spillover as well on EV. So it will be a key part going forward, absolutely, for us.
Yeah, and Christian, you have a very strong car wash subscription model, don't you?
Absolutely.
That allows people to, not endless, but repeat car washing. And and one thing we're all certain of is that EVs need washing, the same as ICE cars.
Well, they need washing. I mean, I think all the information I've seen is that they need the owners do believe that they need washing more frequently than ICE vehicles. I guess they're all new vehicles. They tend to be newer vehicles, don't they? But certainly the EV drivers are very proud of their tech, aren't they? I mean, I think we need to call it tech as much as we call it a car, and they like to keep it shiny.
Well, Dan, I think you were on a Tesla test drive recently, weren't you?
I was at I'm trying to remember which event it was at. I've been to so many lately, but it was a Tesla product launch day of the new Model 3, and I got to test drive the Tesla Model S Plaid, they pronounce it, and it's an 800 brake horsepower 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds Model S. So it's I drove it very carefully around the streets of sunny Wolverhampton in the UK Midlands for about 20 minutes. Yeah, so that was interesting. Anyway, I digress. Easily done. So just looking ahead, Christian, at the future for Circle K in e-mobility inside the Nordics, but also outside the Nordics, what's on the road ahead?
I think we will absolutely continue the journey in Scandinavia. Sweden and Denmark are growing in sort of ultra pace, and have done so for the past couple of years, and I believe that growth will continue in the coming years. So we're definitely gonna catch as much as possible our fair share of that growth. But I would say that Total Energy's acquisition is not just a transaction which is very good geographically. It is a very good transaction time-wise as well. We have now gained very valuable experience, as we talked about, during the past 6 years, and we are now at a point where we are ready to scale our operation into continental Europe, into a larger market, use as much as possible the experience we have. Then, of course, and I had the opportunity to meet together with a colleague of mine, our upcoming colleagues in Germany, who are super engaged to get busy, and so sort of use the best of sort of both teams here to accelerate the growth in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And we have a good job to do there, because what we're taking ownership of is sort of not too many chargers. So I think the ambition is to accelerate that growth.
Yeah, very, very good. And I think it's very impressive. I've thought it's very impressive what Circle K have been doing for many years, and I've been watching it for many years. So congratulations to the team. And it's onwards and upwards, Craig, don't you think?
It's tremendous, and it's really obviously nice to talk to the genuine market leader in this area, and that's a real privilege, and thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Christian, and look forward to seeing you again soon. And Craig, thanks very much for co-hosting this eloquently today on the subject of e-mobility.
Thank you for listening to Shop Talk Live, the podcast. This episode was produced by Dan Munford and Nick Scherzer with support from Jenna Ferguson and Lorraine Evans. It was produced, edited, and mixed by Carolyn Schneer, and music was provided by Wolfgang Worley. Tune in every other week for new episodes, and please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and learn more at globalconvenienceStoreFocus.co.uk.